Bonjour, everyone, and welcome back to the French Football Podcast by yours truly, Jeremy Magan. If you're watching on YouTube, what you've seen was the Stadium of Brisbane here in Australia that hosted a few games in that Women's World Cup that just finished last night with Spain winning the World Cup for the first time in their history in women's football. So, congratulations to Spain. Anyway, we're here, of course, to talk about Ligue 1 and all things French football. And the story of the weekend, we're going to talk about it, was Kylian Mbappé, of course, being back onto the pitch, reintegrated to the PSG group after the 0-0 last week against Lorient. And he helped to Paris Saint-Germain against Toulouse. They didn't win, but he scored a goal, the only goal that his team has scored so far this season. In other news, we'll, of course, talk about all the other results. Marseille drawing, Monaco being able to beat Strasbourg, and some issues in Lyon, mainly with their coach. Anyway, let's start with where the weekend started on Saturday morning here in Australia, Friday night in Europe. Marseille was traveling to Metz, the newly promoted side, and well, it hasn't been a great week for Marseille. I'm sure everybody has followed their issues in the Champions League. They were not able to get through to the playoff round, losing to Panathinaikos on the penalty shootout at the Stade Velodrome on Tuesday night, despite winning the game 2-1. That goal at the very, very last minute for Panathinaikos on a penalty for a handball by Guendouzi proved enough for Panathinaikos to get to the extra time and then win on the penalty. Guendouzi, again, the one missing the penalty, and not the most loved player in Marseille right now, despite a usually very good rep with the supporters. Anyway, on the weekend, they were traveling to Metz, which is no easy feat for any team. Metz is a bit of an how do you call that? A bit of a underrated team, I'd say, just because they come from Ligue 2, but they have a lot of strong players who actually some of them might leave between now and the end of the transfer window. Anyway, in Metz, Marseille started the game well, were the first one to scored by Erman Soglo. I was trying to make sure that I was getting his name right. Erman Soglo, who's a 17-year-old left back / left midfielder. He played left midfielder on the weekend and he scored the first goal for Marseille, an assist from Aubameyang. After that, a goal was cancelled by VAR for Marseille, and there was a bit of noise because of it. Metz got a red card and so finished the game with only 10 players. Yet that's when Metz decided to attack and scored twice in 6 minutes. George Mikotadze scored the second goal. Cheikhtiane Sabali scored the first. George Mikotadze is one of those players that I'm talking about that is very, very good and that might not stay between now and the end of the summer at Metz because of how good he is. Eventually, Marseille was able to grab the draw point with a goal from Vitinha, an assist from Harit, 5 minutes or 8 minutes rather from full-time whistle. But it's not been a very good week, like I said, for Marseille. And we're not seeing what we expect from Marseille, basically. Obviously, with Marcelinho, there's an identity that is starting to develop itself. I said last week that jury was still out. Well, this week we got to see a little bit more what Marcelinho wants to offer. Against Panathinaikos midweek and against Metz on the weekend, there's a little bit more activity. There's definitely a press that wants to be there. But we are seeing quite a bit of, missed opportunities or just the last pass, which is not the one that you expect. And we're seeing a few players actually, I don't know if it's the right way to say it, but actually maybe giving too much, like Jonathan Klose, like Kondogbia sometimes. Obviously, Soglu is young, so that's probably why he's trying to do that. But somehow, maybe with too much activity and not enough of a focused movement, Marcelinho had made a few changes between the midweek and the weekend, which shows that he's definitely trying to play with an extended group. Soglo, like I said, who scored, was playing. The midfield was Rongier and Kondogbia, who was suspended for the game against Panathinaikos. And in defense, it was Mbemba and Balerdi, with Gigot staying on the bench on the weekend. So a few changes. Up front, it was still Aubameyang with Iliman Ndiaye. And Iliman Ndiaye, although he tried a lot, he's still definitely trying to find his feet. And when Vitinha came in, his activity which is much better this season. The Portuguese striker, well, allowed him to score a goal, and he was very close to scoring a second one. Anyway, it's a draw for Marseille, a bit of a disappointing draw when all things considered. You're playing against a team that just got promoted. They get a red card. They play with 10 players, and then you concede twice. So it's not easy. The second goal as well, pretty avoidable. I'm not sure what Paulo Lopez was doing on that one. He's usually a pretty good goalkeeper, Paulo Lopez, but this time he just wasn't able to have it. Anyway, 2-2 was the final score, and I think, for Marseille, probably the heads need to rest a little bit after this week where they really disappointingly were unable to beat Panathinaikos and then didn't get the result that they wanted in Saint-Symphorien against Les Grenats of Metz. But we're going to talk about Metz more, I think, because they're a team that we shouldn't underestimate, although I expect them to really just fight for survival between now and the end of the season. I think they'll get a couple of upsets here or there during their Ligue 1 season. The next game that we kind of have to talk about, right? It was Toulouse against Paris Saint-Germain. Paris Saint-Germain traveling down south after drawing at home against the FC Lorient 0-0. Paris Saint-Germain, who wanted to finally start their season under Luis Enrique. We had seen clearly what Luis Enrique is trying to do at Paris with a possession-based football and a lot of that possession against Lorient. Well, against Toulouse, they tried to do the same, but Toulouse resisted pretty well. 0-0 was still the score at halftime. Mbappé was on the bench. Dembele was on the bench. Well, they both came in, and Mbappé, 10 minutes in, provoked a penalty that VAR had to check, but it was rightfully a penalty and converted his penalty. Did he celebrate a little bit too much? I'm sure everybody who's seen the game probably thought that celebration was a little bit over the top, jumping over the fence and trying to go and harangue the supporters. He's clearly, trying to make sure that the supporters still love him after this really dramatic summer. But I don't know if that's the right way to do it, to overdo it on the first goal that you score, especially if that goal is a penalty. Anyway, unfortunately for him, there wasn't enough to get the win because a penalty was conceded by Paris Saint-Germain with 4 minutes left, and Zakaria Aboulal, the Moroccan international, was the one scoring the penalty for Toulouse. 1-1, 2 games, 2 draws for Paris Saint-Germain. Clearly, they could have won those 2 games, a heap of opportunity, but clearly they're not scoring. And I can tell you, if you haven't watched the game, that Mbappé, Dembele, Gonzalo Ramos is going to be a deadly trio up front. Once they find their mark and once they find their rhythm and their ability to play together, this is going to be really hard to stop by any team in the league and even in the Champions League. So I'm looking forward to seeing a little bit more of that if, of course, Mbappé stays. So far, it looks like that's what's going on. But El Khalafi had said either he resigns a new contract or he goes, and for all accounts, he hasn't signed a new contract. So we're still to hear, we're yet to hear, I should say, why Mbappé was brought back into the group. Where were the conversation and what exactly happened? Because as far as we know right now, Mbappé is going to play his season, most likely, score about 20 goals and probably a bit more and be very important for his team. But then he's going to live on a free, which is exactly what Nasser El Khalafi said he didn't want. Stay tuned. We'll see. I have to say, Toulouse actually impressed me, did a bit more than resist against Paris Saint-Germain. They got another little cat out of the bag with Guillaume Restes, Rest, I guess we should say, the goalkeeper, the new Alban Lafont, who is already called that way because Alban Lafont started in Toulouse when he was 17, 18 years of age, and that's exactly the age that Rest is, and also probably because of the skin color and the size of the goalkeeper, but we're not going to go there. And Rest actually had a very good game against Paris Saint-Germain, made a few saves. I'm not sure if he was supposed to be the starter this season. Toulouse recruited a keeper from Las Palmas in second division in Spain, and they still had Ketil Haug, which is the goalkeeper that helped them winning the Coupe de France last year. But Guillaume Rest apparently has made a pretty good impression, and I'm sure a couple more games like this, and the international level will knock at the door, at least for the under 21, right next to Lucas Chevalier, who's doing okay at Lille as well. Anyway, Toulouse PSG finished 1-1. we like what we see from Paris Saint-Germain. Lucas Hernandez, Ugarte in the middle of the park are doing some nice stuff. Skriniar is okay as well. There's also a few things that we like a little bit less. Fabian Ruiz, Marquinhos, even Hakimi. Things that could be better, but it really looks like under Luis Enrique, the football play is a little bit better. And what we see from Paris Saint-Germain, like I said, scary up front when you have Mbappé and Dembele and Gonzalo Ramos playing, because Gonzalo Ramos hasn't scored yet, but you want to think that it's only a matter of time. The other game that I was watching last night in Australia yesterday afternoon, I guess, in France was Lille against Nantes. And Lille, at the very, very end, was able to get the 3 points. It wasn't easy for Lille to get those 3 points, but eventually it's a goal from Jonathan David and another one from Adam Unas that made the difference for Les Dogs, despite getting a red card from Alexandre Ribeiro for a foul in a position of last player. A bit disappointing maybe for Nantes because they actually fought well, but Lille dominated that game. And under Paulo Fonseca, we know how well they can play football. I'm surprised, to be honest, that Jonathan David is still at Lille after scoring more than 20 goals last year. But I'm sure they're pretty happy up there at the Stade Pierre-Mauroy, Paulo Fonseca and his players, that I can count on the Canadian international. Somebody who's impressive at Lille, and he has to be said, it's Lucas Chevalier. There's a reason why he took over Ilan Meslier as the goalkeeper for the under-23 team of France, and he's proving week in, week out that he's a very, very strong goalkeeper with his hand, with his feet on his line when he comes out. He is definitely going to be one of the stories of the season if he keeps going that way. So will Hakon Haraldsson. We talked about Haraldsson a little bit in our preview with Baptiste because everybody is presenting him as a future amazing player. Well, he has, made an impression. At least he fights a lot. He hasn't scored yet, but he just runs and runs and runs and runs and runs for 90 minutes every single game. So it's going to be interesting to see how he fares for the rest of the season. In Nantes, we kind of know that it's not going to be an easy season. We kind of know that there's a lot going on off the pitch. And so we want to see how they are going to react. They have a very good team, but they did lose André Girotto, which was, one of their leaders on the pitch. Now they lost Alban Lafont on an injury. Rémi Descamps was the goalkeeper playing on the weekend. More room for players like Florent Mollet or Quentin Merlin to show their leadership skills as well. Pedro Chirivella, who's the captain now, also maybe can show what he can bring to that team. We haven't yet seen it yet, so we'll see. We'll see in the days to come, in the weeks to come, if Nantes is able to do something a little bit better. Otherwise, as we said in the preview, Aris Touy might be the first coach to go, unfortunately. The last game that was played this weekend, and that was probably one of the most anticipated game, was RC Lens against FC Rennes. Of course, two teams that finished second and fourth last season, and two teams that we expect to see at the top of the table. Well, the game finished 1-1 with a goal from David Machado 3 minutes in, and then an answer from Benjamin Bourigeaud on penalty at the 53rd minute to goal either side of the break. And a game that I've got to say was a little bit disappointing early for the first half at least. And then in the second half, that became a little bit crazy and a lot of end-to-end stuff. Lens dominated. I'd say Lens, probably deserved their win overall, but Rennes had so many clear-cut chances at the end that if Rennes had gotten the 3 points, I don't think anybody would have been mad. Brice Samba again showed why he's the number 2 now in the French national team with a lot of saves. But Lens, I think, are getting into the rhythm of understanding what that new status means, what being the team who finishes second in the league, a point behind Paris Saint-Germain, means. Every other team in the league now is waiting for them, is not going to give them any space, and they're doing well playing that way. It was very good last night to listen to Franck Hez, the coach from Lens, who went onto the radio to give a bit of a long post-game conference and explain what was going on in the team right now. And he was obviously, pretty happy that they just signed, Elie Wahi, the striker who scored more than 20 goals with Montpellier last year, because Frank Hez was saying that what they're missing up front is that pace, is that speed. Sotoka, with his own weapons and with his own, tools and way of playing football, has been good offensively for Lens. But a kid like Elie Wahi, who's just, like, he's just a burst of speed, technically above average and pretty good in front of goals, is going to do them a world of good. They also have Morgan Guilavogui, who was playing at Paris FC in the second division last year. But even Francaise was saying that he hopes that Guilavogui will adapt to the game, but that is not there yet. In the meantime, Rennes, like I said, had the chances. And when Rennes starts making their changes, they're not bringing in young up-and-coming players. They're bringing in Nemanja Matic, the former Manchester United and Chelsea player, and AS Roma as well. They're bringing in Jeremy Doku, who is supposedly going to go and play for Manchester City. We're still waiting to see when that happens, but I heard that the transfer was about 50 million or something like that. They're bringing Adrien Truffert onto the left side. So there's a bit of talent on that bench. They're bringing the two Doué brothers as well. So Rennes looks very serious this season. And like I said, maybe they were dominating on the game, but at the end, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 chances that for some reason Brice Samba is able to save on his line, that could have really made the difference and could have been really, really dangerous for Lens. Shows that Lens, when they are home last year, they were winning this game. This year, they're struggling a little bit. It's going to keep everything open, and that's Lens with only 1 point after 2 games as well, which is surprising. Again, for a team who now has a new status, second in Ligue 1, the ability to spend 35 million euros to get a striker that was, that was looked at by Chelsea and by Milan, and so they are now supposed to be one of the best team in our league. We now expect them to have result, not like the last 2 years where we were surprised every time they get a result. Now we expect them to win every single game. So it's going to be something new for Francaise and his players to deal with. Another team that we expect to have result and hasn't had any is Lyon. Lyon is at the bottom of the table right now after losing last week 2-1 against Strasbourg. They lost at home to Montpellier. No Wahi. Well, it's still a party for Montpellier. Montpellier, who won 4-1 at the OL Groupama Stadium. Pretty disappointing for Lyon. The goal scorer Moussa Al-Tamari, Accor Adams, Arnaud Nordin, and who scored the last goal for Montpellier? Here you go. So I'm going to have to make sure and check. Oh, sorry, 2 goals from Altamari. That's what happened. The answer from Lyon came from Alexandre Lacazette, and Alexandre Lacazette got a red card during that game. Frustrated to be fouled, he turned around and kicked Teji Savanier and got a red card for it. Going from bad to worse, really, for Lyon. Anthony Lopez is injured. Dejan Lovren is injured. A few players are missing. Triton Mata injured himself last week. And to make matters worse, Laurent Blanc is shooting himself in the foot in press conference. I'm sure everybody has heard of it by now, but if you haven't, Laurent Blanc in the post-game press conference, frustrated, most likely, upset, was asked what needs to change in Lyon for them to get results. They have very good players. They have a quality that should see them at the other end of the table. And his answer to that question was, we need to change the coach, which left everyone shocked, obviously, but is also a dumb answer, I'm sorry, to give. Like, are you trying to show that you're smarter than everybody else, or are you trying to cause issues in your club? There's already so many issues at Lyon since Textor came over. If you haven't followed, there's been some drama between Jean-Michel Aulas, sort of leaving but not leaving. He still has 9% in the club, so he's making a lot of noise with newspaper and journalists, which impacts the way the club is run. Textor and Aulas sort of talked via press release the whole summer, and it's all messy and petty, and really at the end of the day the club suffers and the fans suffer. And then Laurent Blanc, 2 games lost. He's upset because Lukeva was sold to Leipzig. He's upset because Tagliafico might be sold as well. But going onto national TV and saying you need to change the coach just because you're frustrated, just because you want to show that you're smarter, to me is not the way to go. And to me, it's not a good look for a coach that is supposed to be above all that is supposed to be above the stress that won Ligue 1 with Bordeaux, won Ligue 1 with Paris Saint-Germain. He's got the experience. He's a world champion with France. I mean, he's got the experience. He knows what pressure is, and he looks like he's crumbling under it in Lyon. So I'm sure we're going to hear more of it in the next hours, even if not in the next days. But sorry, but I wouldn't be surprised if Laurent Blanc is told to go, if I'm honest, because I don't understand what he's doing, and I really don't understand why he would say that in a press conference after a game that you've lost 4-1 at home. I think it's pretty poor. At best, it's poor. Um, Meanwhile, Montpellier, they're not talking. They're just doing their thing. And they have 4 points in 2 games. So, sometimes you also have to look at the teams that are working in the shadow and see how much you have to follow them to see what they can do. Another team that has surprised, to say the least, so far is Brest. 2 games, 2 win. It's a team that you expect every single year to fight to stay in Ligue 1, and they're taking the right start. They didn't beat Lyon and Paris Saint-Germain, but that results against Le Havre is positive for Brest. They were able to win away from home against Le Havre. Le Havre finished first in Ligue 2 last year, and despite scoring first, Romain Del Castillo, who's having a second life in Brest, an equalizer from Daler Kouzaïev. I said it during the preview. Watch for Daler Kouzaïev at Le Havre. He comes from Zenit St. Petersburg. He's a very, very good signing for Le Havre, and he scored his first goal after the second game. And then an assist from Del Castillo offered the winning goal to Lilian Brassier just a few minutes after that Kouzaïev goal, and a 2-1 win for Brest, who's doing what you want them to do under Eric Roy, taking 6 points, within 2 games. It's the perfect start for a team that is going to fight to avoid relegation. So it was interesting to see that they were able to get out of that the way they did. If you're asking me who's the other leader in Ligue 1, well, the other leader in Ligue 1 is the team that we always wonder when they're going to have their strong season, because they have to have strong season because they are the second budget in France. Monaco, who was able to smash, there's no other word, Strasbourg 3-0 at the Stade Louis II, and 2 goals were scored by Takumi Minamino, the former Liverpool player, who is apparently showing that now maybe they can count on him at Monaco after a season that was less than impressive last year. Well, in this second game, he's just scored a brace, one missile from the edge of the box, one header from the 6 yard, and then the third goal was scored by Ben Yedder, and we know what's going on right now with Wissam Ben Yedder. So who knows what's going to happen. It's everybody is always a little bit cautious. He's presumed to be innocent, so even if he's being accused of the worst stuff, right now in France there's what we call the presumption d'innocence. So as long as you're innocent until you're proven guilty, and right now he's accused of sexual assault, etc. But Monaco plays him, and he scores last week. He scores this week. The assist this week came from Minamino, so 2 goals, 1 assist for Minamino during this game, and good for him. For Strasbourg, after that success last week against Lyon, a pretty stark defeat against Monaco, and a defeat that showed the limits a little bit of Strasbourg. I guess a defeat to me that shows what I was afraid of with Strasbourg, coached by Patrick Vieira. Just not a lot of creativity, just not a lot going on really. And when defensively the team is just a little bit less good than you want them to be, well, they get punished straight away. And a player like Takumi Minamino, however talented he is, you're not allowed to have a player his size scoring a header in your box, and just have to say you're just not allowed to do that. So it happened, but I'm sure there's going to have conversations about letting a player who's not even 1.70 m scoring a free header like this in the middle of your box. The other results that we had in Ligue 1 this week, Lorient and Nice finished 1-1. A little bit of controversy with Lorient and Nice. Apparently, Olivier Létang, not Olivier Létang, excuse me, Olivier Létang is in Lille. The name will get back to me. Loïc, who's in charge at Lorient now? Anyway, whoever is in charge at Lorient complained that the Nice sporting director was with the referees before the game, and that supposedly he was telling the referees that they had to referee for Nice, and so that made a little bit of noise before the game. It's always fun, right, to see what's going on with those games. And in France, it looks like as soon as a president or a sporting director talks to a referee, everyone shouts corruption or whatever that is. The last game of the weekend in Ligue 1 was between Reims and Clermont. And Reims, after a good game at Marseille, despite not getting the result, well, they got the win against Clermont 2-1. Marshal Mounetzi and Mohamed Darami, the two goal scorers, 2-0. Actually, what am I saying? 2-1. 2-0. So Reims is starting their season the right way. Junya Ito was able to get an assist in there after scoring a goal last week. It looks like the Japanese strikers are all the rage right now in France, and it means that Reims put themselves into the middle of the table nicely but surely at the 8th place. The table, if we look at it right now, Monaco and Brest at the top, 6 points each. Rennes, Montpellier, Lille, Marseille, and Toulouse following with 4 points. Paris Saint-Germain at the 12th spot. It's not going to last. It's interesting to see them that way. 2 games, 2 draw. And like we said, Nantes, Clermont, and Lyon yet to pick up a point in Ligue 1. That's it for our quick recap of game week number 2 in Ligue 1. There is a midweek game this week. It's Lille against Rijeka, the team from Croatia, for the Conference League playoff. But otherwise, we'll see each other this weekend for another very busy Ligue 1 fixtures. Nantes, Monaco will be the first game. Marseille is playing Brest. A highly anticipated first versus second, Paris Saint-Germain against Lens on Saturday night, Sunday morning here in Australia. Rennes will host Le Havre, Strasbourg, Toulouse, Montpellier, Reims, Clermont-Metz, and Nice-Lyon to finish the weekend. Thank you guys for listening to the French Football Podcast by Jérémy Magan. Don't hesitate to like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and ask any question you would have. I leave you with a little bit more of that beautiful stadium from Brisbane, and I look forward to our next episode.